Good morning, everybody. Yeah, you made it to Wednesday. This is very successful. I mean, we're taking the small victories. That's what we've got here. And this morning we have incredibly with us. I'm very pleased to welcome to the show. First time, I think. I mean, Alan, you've been on Cliff Central before. I think you've been on my show before, and you've been on Casper's show, and you've been all over the place. Alan Committie, look at him in all his glory.
Hey,
there he is.
Wednesday delight.
You look great. What's been happening with you, man? How have you been doing through all of this ridiculousness of the last couple of years?
Yeah, and it certainly has been plenty of ridiculousness. It seems to be kind of evening out a little bit. Corporate stuff has picked up a little bit, so a bit of MC and some funnies around. Very thankfully, the theatres have opened up now finally to 100%. So that's made a huge difference. Not only for the comedy shows, but for some of the stuff that I produce and acting, which is slightly more serious and kind of needs as many bums and seats as possible to make it viable.
Hell yes, absolutely. Yeah. Simpiwe Mtetwa, it's good to see you, Simpiwe. How are you doing this morning?
I am good. How are you?
Excellent. For those who are always asking, Simpiwe is not available for dates this week. She has decided. We don't break any rules here. You're gonna make
sure Gareth, don't do that. What if my potential husband is like watching, and now you've just said don't try anything? No, people.
If he loves
keep
you
shooting
enough,
your shots. Keep shooting your shots.
If he loves you enough, he won't listen to me. I mean, really. Alan Committie, for anybody who doesn't know by now, is one of South Africa's leading award-winning comic performers. He's also performed in the UK and the US, and he's best known for his comic one-man shows, but is also renowned for his 8-year stint as the star of the Broadway hit Defending the Caveman. And of course, he is also in a new show, which is happening. It's called Love Factually. It's at the Theatre Marcellus at Emperor's Palace. So when does that start? This week?
That's right. Just two nights this weekend. A quick in and out. But lovely to do the show again. This was a follow-up to Caveman. Essentially what happened was Caveman was written by an American comic almost 32 years ago now. And we between Tim Plewman and myself, there were over 2,000 performances in this country. But essentially with rights and royalties and exchange rates, it just became a silly notion to continue doing it here. At one point, they were trying to charge us 50% of our takings. So we thought, well, stuff that, and we quietly told them to maybe reconsider that. They didn't. So between Peter Turin and myself, we decided we would write a kind of follow-up version. And so Love Factually was born about 4 or 5 years ago. And it's a kind of slightly more modern take on dating and a look at the foibles between, couples and all the genders and et cetera, et cetera. So, that show's been floating around now, and I kind of revisit it intermittently between other projects.
So Caveman has been probably performed more on South African stages than almost any other show, if you work out the number of
certainly as a solo show.
Yeah, I mean, that's incredible. And this is obviously a subject which really resonates with people. I mean, we often end up talking about relationships on this show, right. Even though I'm not the world's expert by a long shot. I've pretty much ruined or screwed up or at least exited after only a very short time most of my relationships. I'm no expert at all. Simpiwe has also got a shit track record. I mean, everybody
You're
else
on a roll today, Gareth.
Everybody else on the show, from Leanne on Mondays to Ben on Fridays, we haven't got terrific depth and success here. I mean, what kind of personal relationships have you had in your life that inform this? Because you have to have some experience to be able to talk about these things.
Sure, but they don't have to be good experiences, because any experience will inform, some knowledge about it. It doesn't make you an expert. I don't think anyone's an expert at it. I suggest that people who've been married for 45, in fact, last Sunday in Cape Town, I did this at Corpay Theatre. We had a couple who had been married for 58 years. And
wow.
Who's to say that's successful? It's certainly long. I remember I'm a qualified high school teacher, and the guy who taught me English methodology all those years ago said, there are many teachers out there who have 25 to 30 years of experience, but it could be 30 years experience of the same bad year. So don't assume longevity is, brilliance. And I think the same of a relationship. There might be people who've done well to stay together Are they happy? Well, I don't know. So I think part of the pleasure of both Caveman and perhaps even Love Factually is that I position myself as someone who's learning literally in front of the audience and really turns to the audience, theoretically or maybe even figuratively, and says, can you help me? Because this is what's puzzling me, or this is what's befuddling me. And perhaps you can recognize some of this, which of course is what makes the show. And by the way, not just in this country, I think they've been at its peak in the late 90s, early 2000s. There were 16 productions of it around the world, including one in the Middle East, which I would have paid some good money to see how that show panned out.
They've got an interesting take on a lot of that stuff.
Yes, they certainly do. Exactly. There's a Vegas version that's still running. It has been running now for 30 years. So it certainly has spoken to a universal kind of resonance around relationships.
I do want to spend a bit of time this morning talking about you and your incredible kind of career and the things that you've done and the people you've met and the places you've been. But I'd also, we kind of just want to talk about all the stuff that's going on in the world today. Yes. and then get your take on that. Before we get onto all of that stuff, though, how do you learn lines? I mean, this is always something, it sounds so easy and simple and stupid to people who are in the profession, who've been acting, who've done comedy. I mean, I can't learn a script of like 5 sentences.
Right.
And I've got all day to do it, and it's 5 sentences. And yet you could get up on a stage for 2 nights and do a show. And obviously there's a little bit of improv here and there. Right. But to remember where it's going, I would get lost. I have to write down everything I say, or I just have to wing it. There's no in between. Like I can never learn this stuff. How do you actually sit down and learn this kind of material?
So I would answer that in 2 ways. The one is to say your skill. People will ask you, how do you wing it? How do you sit down for 2 or 3 hours with your show, whether it's on radio or live, and make it sound like you're very erudite and well opinionated and well, I would suggest you do that because A, it's kind of in your DNA, but B, years and years of experience have given you the innate ability, like driving a car, like riding. It's in your body now, and you're able to do it quicker and more efficiently with perhaps even less preparation. I would say learning words becomes a muscle. It's certainly training your parts of your brain that allow you to remember stuff. And the more you learn stuff, the better you get at it, the quicker you're able to do it. That's the first thing. The second is when I'm learning gags for shows, stuff that I've written, I find that very easy because I want to get the laugh. So I want to know the exact right word I have to say in the exact right order to get that laugh.
Right.
So there's an intention behind it. And if that sounds wanky and obvious, that's all it is. You if you want to, you will. Now, the other side of that is when I'm doing acting, and I can actually announce, this is a Gareth Cliff Central first, if you will, but we're about to announce tomorrow or Friday that we're going to do a production of Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. In fact, it's a 60th anniversary production, the first production back in 62. And Sylvain Strike is directing, me and Robin Scott. Now that script, which I'm learning at the moment, I'm on 117 pages of dialogue, and most of that. So I am learning 5 pages a day at the moment. And when you say, how do you make it say, I don't know, because it doesn't feel easy right now. What I would say is that it will be easy. I like to learn theatre lines in relation to having worked on the floor. In other words, if a director and an actor I'm working with, or 2 or 3 actors, we work together with script in hand, and I go home and I can learn the lines in relation to positions, to physical space, to intention. A director said on that line, you're upset and you actually feel frustrated. I can link that frustration to a line or two, or go, oh yes, this is where Robin's on my right. She's walking back to the bookcase. That's when I swing around and say that line. It's easier then to connect context to certain lines and remember it that way. To learn lines in a vacuum here at home, not having done it, man, I'm finding that tough.
Yeah, that's hard. I mean, that's the thing, because obviously I would be so talented. I'd just be brilliant. I'd walk off the stage. And that's the thing that's holding me back is like, I can't
there it is.
If only, oh God, if only you gave me the power to learn lines, I'd be fantastic. Finally, I get something right in my life. Oh my God. No, I couldn't do it. I mean, you've explained it very sensibly, and it sounds right to me, but it's just not within my power.
Yeah, and that's it. I guess we all have our own little superpowers, and and listen, there are some actors who struggle. They don't have that skill, or they don't have it developed.
What do you do? What do you do if one of your co-stars in a show is forgetting their lines all the time and constantly letting everyone down, and you're having to retake and retake and retake, and it's pissing everyone off? How much patience are you meant to have, and how much are you allowed to lose your temper?
Well, that's a very good question. I think on a film and a TV set, what's great is it's frustrating, but there are solutions where you can literally start editing from line to line. So you just let them do one line, cut away to something, do one line. It makes for terrible visual pleasure, but you can get away with it. On stage, you then rely on fellow actors to pick up the energy, pick up the pace, pick up the story. I've been with an actor who would skip 3 or 4 pages of vital plot information. And
Whoa! Wait, what do you mean skip? Like in the middle of the sentence, they're already on page 10. You're like, no, that's the way we act.
Was this person drunk? Was this person drunk?
In fact, in this instance, he was a little drunk, to be fair.
Yeah.
So that that makes the question is how much string can you give them? Well, maybe once, twice, but there are moments. Listen, I often end up being a producer on these shows, so you get a kind of added pressure on how then do you deal with them, not just as an acting colleague, but as part of management, if you will. So, but it's far less. It doesn't happen as often as you'd think, and most guys are, especially in this country, the work is rare. That stage work is so rare that to get into a production, and if you cast it well, I guess that's part of the secret anyway. You're not going to have that.
Corona's boring says practice makes perfect. That's why the politicians start lying from day one.
Yeah, they have no idea what their lines are, so they're making it up every moment.
All right. Well, that's stuff that I always am slightly jealous of. I'm jealous of that. I'm jealous of the ability some people have to write music. I find that to be a really, really enviable talent. But I see all this music in the background in your. Where are we, in your office?
Yeah.
Are those DVDs?
These are DVDs. I'm an 80s and 90s baby. So these were DVDs that when we couldn't get stuff, remember in the 90s when you traveled overseas, all I would bring back as contraband would be bags and bags of comedy and British television or American television that I couldn't access here. And I quite like having the physical thing. So I can't get rid of it. So I've got something like 3,000 or 4,000 DVDs here. And then behind me over here, I'm also a cricket man. So these are all my cricket DVDs and autobiographies. I do a podcast with Dan Nichol called Two Full Tosses, where we get an opportunity to talk a lot of crap with some great cricketers, international and local.
I saw Dan Nichol on Friday last week. He has a broken foot or something.
That's right. He does.
What did he do? He told me that. I thought it was so embarrassing. I forgot.
Yeah, he tore his Achilles. It turns out his Achilles heel is his Achilles heel. Who knew? And he hardly mentions it more than 6 or 7 times a second. So
he's a real victim. Hey, he loves a little bit of sympathy.
It's
what a
another
pain in the ass.
Yeah.
My look at my foot, and look at my crutch, and woe is me, and can't you order me an Uber, and can't you pay for my meal?
This was before the injury. It's been worse since he's got the injury.
I mean, really, if you're going to be a TV celebrity, you must have a little bit of pride and self-respect, and not tell everybody about your weaknesses straight away. I mean, really.
That's right. Look at Rian Kreyvagen. That's a stoic man, if ever there was.
Oh, I love that. All right, so Alan Committie's with us. Simpiwe Mtetwa, me, you, everybody else. The comments section alive and well this morning. I see some people are already getting things done and doing some really cool stuff. Bailey is already at a very busy OR Tambo, about to go to East London. Well, I'm pleased OR Tambo is busy because we only have like 1 or 2 airlines actually functioning at the moment, don't we?
Yeah, it's no fun to be traveling across the country at the moment. If you don't book, 3 days ahead, your flights, everything's sold out on 2 days ahead of time these days.
Right. I mean, it used to be that it just got more expensive, but you'd always be able to get a seat. Now, if you don't book well in advance, you won't even get a plane. Correct. So forget about it. You have to plan these things well in advance. It's terrifying. So, all right, have you done a lot of traveling over the last little while?
I have, and it's got kind of interesting and weird. Listen, I was traveling at one point just after hard lockdown finished, when the airports were eerily quiet. I don't know if you did that, where you'd be like 3 or 4 people in the airport. That was kind of weird.
Alan, I flew back from a wedding in Durban at the beginning of lockdown. That was March of 2020, and it was the day before Cyril shut us down.
Right.
So I think people had already suspected something was going on, and I landed back at Lanseria, and I think there were like 5 people in the airport who were passengers. Like there was the staff, and there was 5 maybe passengers, and that plane coming back was empty. And we were all walking around like, when I expected if we ever had a zombie apocalypse or something, this would be how it would feel. It was like this quiet and people all looking at each other suspiciously of like, what's going to happen next?
Right.
Like, can I trust you? What's going to go down here? I need to get home fairly quickly. Don't fuck around, get on with it. That kind of thing.
Now, listen, this opens up an interesting question, which I play with friends sometimes. In a zombie apocalypse,
I love this game.
Which mall would you go to give you the best chance to escape the impending zombie kind of? Because in Cape Town, of course, there are many. You got,
which
for example,
mall? The worst place you want to be is a shopping mall. There'll be so many. Of course,
but in this game, you have to go to a mall. You're not near the safe. Don't make up your own rules. I'm telling you.
You go first, because you go to a mall where there aren't any people, like a shit mall. That's where you go. My opinion.
I don't know, because you also want to be able to kind of like hide, and that's the thing. Like I want to go to a mall that I know really, really well. So because I'm an East Rand girl, let's stick with the East Rand. I will, because I know that more like inside out, and it's only one floor. So I'd go with East Rand Mall. I think that's where I'd go.
I would go 4 ways more, because no one can gain access to that mall at the moment. There's
God.
Many roads around it, but there's no way to get in. So I'm assuming the zombies will have the same problem. And then once you're inside, you can't find what you're looking for. So again, I'm assuming they will have that same difficulty trying to find me.
Well, as my friend Gord Laws always says when he's in character as Hard Eddie, he goes, 4 ways, in no way. Maybe that's a good one. You are right. It is surrounded by roads. Maybe that would, it could be a good one, only because it's got so many entrances and it's so goddamn confusing, and it's huge. Is the Mall of Africa? It's just big.
Yes.
And if you could obviously be eaten by any number of 1 million zombies in there, but you could also escape via 20 different entrances, 900 parking areas.
Yeah. Just stay in the parking lot, you'll be fine. Like
not even a zombie with a sense of smell could find you in that place, because it's so confusing.
And you also have this. I grew up in Vanderbilt. Listen, I don't want to upset everybody here, but I grew up in Vanderbilt Park all those many years ago, and then I've mostly been a Cape Town.
Sorry, we've lost Alan. I'm so sorry. I don't know what
the curse of the Vol Triangle strikes again. But I want to say that there are certain places in each of the big cities in this country where there's certain suburbs I can't find. So in Cape Town, it's Heathfield. People tell me Heathfield, but I don't believe Heathfield exists.
Where the hell is Heathfield?
You're going towards Retreat, and then there's a sign that says Heathfield, and then
hold on. I don't even know where Retreat is in Cape Town.
Where are you in Cape Town right now?
Someone's taking the piss. Someone said to you a while ago, Alan, meet me in Heathfield just to mess with you, so that you would drive around for hours and hours.
But Mall of Africa is one of those for me, because people often say, well, and I have a vague idea where it is, but it feels like it's in some kind of Twilight Zone-y. There are many ways to get there, but if you're not concentrating, you're past it before you arrive at it. Wow. Before you lap yourself to get there again on another day. Earlier.
Well, another Alan says, is anyone connected via Addis Ababa's airport? Is it any good? And then Snyer replied and said, I've been there before. It was the worst airport I'd connected from, but this was 2015. Things may have changed.
Right.
It was apparently hot. The airport was being built. There were vendors in the airport, so it didn't feel like it was an international airport. There was no Wi-Fi. I couldn't get a SIM card anywhere. Sounds like hell. That's Addis Ababa. And you would obviously, if you fly Ethiopian Airlines, you'd have to fly with them. Yasin says he'd go to Boulders in Midrand. Oh, no.
Midrand. No, we're not doing Midrand.
I'll tell you what, Midrand may have the most vicious zombies of all, so I don't know if I'd want to be there. Dogoza says, I'm going to Belito Junction. That place was a fort during the riots last year.
Ah, nice.
Clever. That's a good one.
Very.
Ethan says, I've gotten lost at every mall I've visited in Joburg, so malls are not a good idea for me. Tumi says, Rosebank Mall. At least you'll have quick access to the Gautrain tunnels. Clever. Except that those Gautrain tunnels will also be creeping with zombies.
Correct.
I mean, Michael says this is a childish discussion, and he's going. He's
bless him.
Well, let's give him a minute to leave.
What else was he expecting on Wednesday at 6:30?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what do you want us to be dissecting Prince Harry's fucking UN speech? Really?
It's the same. It covers the same area.
How can you not know Heathfield, Alan? It's the place between rich whites and then the coloureds. I actually stay next to it. So Yonda, are you on the border, literally, of being rich and white or being poor and coloured? Thank you, apartheid government. There's another great distinction, thanks to all those brilliant men so many years ago who decided to separate us by race. So now we have suburbs like Heathfield that nobody knows, except the people who live in Heathfield. Okay. All right. Very, very good. Here's someone who's also from Vanderbijl Park. No need to go to the Mall of Africa. Don't need that stress in my life, says Clint. Yeah, but you're in Vanderbijl Park. You don't have any money anyway. What would you do in the Mall of Africa? All right, lots of things to get to this morning. We want to hear from you. Send us your comments live on the YouTubes. You must also, as I always have to say, like and subscribe. By the way, Lebang, speaking of liking and subscribing, Lebang yesterday did send me a recipe to try out on the air fryer. And I know this is everybody's favorite subject, but she did. I also saw her on social media yesterday with all of her children. She had 4 of them on a video with her. And they're all young and they were all like really sleepy. And I sent her a message and said, I don't know how you managed like 4 children.
No, Gareth. There's a video that she posted before that, and she's like 2 weeks after giving birth. Her body is snatched. She is looking all so sexy. I was like, girl, wait, what? Like, this is you 2 weeks after popping out another kid? Okay. I might want to sign this deal, but she's looking absolutely amazing.
She is, and she's literally she's a factory for producing children, and she's so good at it that she just goes snap back into shape and back into work. She's incredible.
Does she have them so that she's got more people to help in the kitchen? Is this part of her?
We don't know.
At this stage, they're too much work because they're still all young. There's one who's 8, and the rest who are like very, very young. So. Yeah, and there's a newborn now as well. So they're not helpful in the kitchen yet.
No, they don't become helpful till they're teens, do they? No.
I mean, really, when can you put children into like hard work at home? 5?
Oh, the minute they can talk and
really?
walk.
I think so.
Yes. Like if you can say, please, thank you. You can do some work. You can pick up that, shoe that you left. You can pick up that toy. You start off very small. That's the trick. You don't get them to do hard stuff. But the minute they can, they're conscious of like, oh, no, pick up that.
See,
put it there.
That's
move
good.
that there. And
What
then you
else?
start with the cooking. And then you're like, okay, you can help me chop.
You have to feed these children. You have to clothe them. You have to send them to school. You have to pay for all of their stuff. The least they can do is work like a team around your house.
100%.
Yeah. I don't believe any of this nonsense of like, oh no, the children must be looked after and catered to for their entire childhoods. Not a chance. We were given jobs to do.
Do you not have food in this house? Who bought that food? It is me. So you are catered for. Like, are the lights not paid? You are catered for. Do you not have a roof over your head? You are catered for. The least you can do. The least. It's just wash the dishes. Come on now. That's the least you can do.
Great. Yeah. Oh, this is amazing. Yonda says, I was in Mall of Africa last month. Not really that big to me, and there was parking available. It reminded me of Canal Walk here in Cape Town. There's always parking because there's so much of it.
Yeah.
I don't think you could ever fill that parking. You'd need to take everyone off the highway, and then you'd still have enough parking.
I quite like that. I'd love to take everyone off the highway.
Oh, wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be nice? Yeah. All right. Well, we've got lots to get to in terms of the news. Got some headlines. Let me get to those quickly and see what we can learn. about today. So first of all, Uber has got to pay $2.2 million to disabled riders over weight fees. So apparently, I don't know if this is something that's happened in South Africa yet, but in the US, the firm agreed to waive charges for disabled users in the future because there was a claim that was brought by the US government that its wait time fees discriminated against customers with disabilities because they take longer to get in the car because of the wheelchairs or whatever else it is.
Have you already been
Frankly,
charged?
I would not. If I were an Uber driver, I wouldn't wait for the person in the wheelchair. It takes too long. Then it takes too long on the other side. You're losing money, man.
You have no sense of patience, Gareth. Like,
None.
I mean,
Zero. I would just say, I'd say, you see, this is why Uber would never hire me. I'd say, unfortunately, no cripples.
Yeah. No, well, it's nice to have principles. I think that's good. Listen, the way our Uber drivers are going, this country, they don't pick up anyone anywhere. I haven't met an Uber driver now who picks up people. They're just there on the app, I think, as a kind of Tinder replacement.
I am a fan. I will stand up for Uber. I've used them a lot. I don't have any issues with Uber. And look, I'm not a woman who's had an Uber driver make an unsavory comment or make a move. Obviously, that happens from time to time. It's going to happen anywhere in the world. There's going to be some creep in every job, right? There are creepy people in every profession. But I think that Uber is doing a terrific service. I just don't know that they should be handing out all this money to, in this case, the US government.
Yeah.
Who say that they're going to pass it on to disabled. Of course they won't. Governments never pass on the money. They always keep it. So apparently what they do is Uber charges a wait time fee in some cities, and they've been doing this since 2016. They've ended the practice now. The average fee was 60 cents. Under the terms of the deal, Uber agreed to pay more than 1.7 million to about 1,000 riders who had complained. So, I mean, sometimes complaining can earn you some money. I mean, for 1,000 people, 1.7 million, that's a couple of $1,000 each. That's not so bad.
That's okay.
They paid some 500,000 more to some people who were identified by the Department of Justice. Officials said the statement would also yield hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars in compensation for more than 65,000 people who signed up to the waivers. Now, I don't know. Those people sound like they're taking a chance. People with disabilities, this is what they said, should not be made to feel like second-class citizens or punished because of their disability, which is exactly what Uber's wait time fee policy did. So there we go. Well, don't ask me for a lift if you're in a wheelchair because I don't have the patience and I won't wait. I'd rather get one of these Ubers. And if they're late, complain. And if you take a long time, complain again if they charge you.
If they want to make extra money in America, they should make that wait time about kilogram weight.
I agree, right? I agree with that. Because as Corona's Boring says, with a 600-pounder, you'll need to use a lot of grease to get them in and out of the car or use a cake on a stick. That's a very good point. So we got to look out for that. It's very important information. This Queen's greatest hits have sold 7 million copies, breaking a UK chart record. Now, yesterday we talked a little bit about music that is making a comeback from the 80s because of Stranger Things.
Yeah.
Well, apparently their first greatest hits collection, that's Queen, the band, Freddie Mercury and Company, from 1981, is now owned by 1 in every 4 households in the UK. So 1/4 of all the households in the UK have a Queen album, which has meant that it is a perennial bestseller of all time. It recently spent its 1,000th week on the UK album chart. Queen guitarist Brian May called the latest achievement joyous news. No album has done this before in history, he said in a statement. Thank you, we appreciate it. Thank you very, very much. We're honored and humbled, and we salute you. Now, what's amazing about this, and Lebang came onto the show yesterday. Alan, if you haven't listened to the show before, Lebang is one of our regulars. Right. And she said to me she woke up yesterday morning with Bohemian Rhapsody in her head. I don't know. And it is the song that has repeatedly and consistently won a greatest song of all time contest on every radio station anywhere in the world at any time, because it just seems to appeal to everybody. And it really is like a breakaway, incredible, varied, genius work of musical art. Brilliant. But, I mean, that this is still making the money now. I have to ask this question, which I asked on Instagram yesterday. Have all the great songs already been written?
Ooh.
Yes. Yes, and yes.
You think so?
Yes. Yes, there's only so many notes and so many keys and so many, like, the greatest song has been written, and I see it with like my generation, when it comes to music, that most artists are just sampling. Like their greatest hit is from a sample. So it's tickets, it's done. Like, and we don't really have real talent now. So we just have people just
you like today. A lot of the music that you like today, you go, oh, I like it because it sounds like, or it reminds me of, and then you go to something little from your generation, perhaps. Interesting that Bohemian Rhapsody came into a kind of consciousness because, like Kate Bush's stuff in Stranger Things, because of what was the movie with Mike Myers? And remember they were headbanging in the car, and they brought.
Was it Dumb and Dumber? No, it was.
Oh my God!
Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventures.
And so it did the same thing. It kind of came back in, and people went, "Oh, look at this! This is amazing!" But for many people before, they went, "Well, of course, Queen's been around forever." I own all of Queen's greatest hits. It sits here on a little shelf behind this computer. Big fan, yeah. I had a pleasure a couple of years ago. I did a pantomime in London. I was doing some work in the UK, and I worked with Brian May's wife, who's very famously a EastEnders actress. Of many years, kind of like our Charlize Surti Richards, well known, but very much a soap actress. And she was in the production, which meant Brian May came to watch the show 2 or 3 times. And I actually put in a gag for the show, knowing that he would be there. And I'm such a huge fan, who wouldn't be, where we had 2 guards. I was playing the kind of comic in the show, Chester the Jester. Don't. And I said to the director, can we call one of the guards who were unnamed? They were part of the company chorus. Can I call one of them Brian? Because one of the lines she says at the end of the show is the evil witch, is she says to the princess, I would love to live a happy life like you. I'm so sad that I'm always kind of seen as evil and despicable. And they said, well, why don't you find someone lovely to marry? And she said, who would marry me? And I said, I'm sure
Brian May.
Say no, but Brian May. And then I would turn.
Oh my God. Dumb.
The crowd would go silent.
And I mean, was he front and center? Could you see him? Because often
he came to me afterwards. He said, I love that gag. And I said, I mean, come on, how tremendous.
Oh, it was Wayne's World. I was thinking Bill
Wayne's
Ted.
World, of course, Wayne's World. Thank you, Via.
Right.
Yes.
See, we need people to correct us from time to time. Right. Bohemian Rhapsody, that is. All right, so listen to this just to follow up on that. According to the accounts filed by the band's company, Queen Productions, sales and streams of their music generated £39 million in royalties in just the last year.
Whoa.
Now, I mean, as much as we love Brian and Roger and whoever else is left, the fact is this is Freddie's money and he's dead. So they're all profiting handsomely off him not being around anymore. Because really, it's mostly his money that, no one's coming to see Adam Lambert, Let's be fair. Anyway, Elton John has warned the constant presence of greatest hits compilations on the album charts is starving newer acts of opportunities. He said, the album chart is full of things like me, ABBA, and Queen. He says the odd thing comes through like Sam Fender or Harry Styles, or you get a new artist coming in at number 3 and then disappearing. But he says it's depressing. This is Elton John. He's complaining about his success. He says,
he must stop talking.
There are a lot of good albums that deserve to be in the albums chart. And then he mentions a bunch of people I've never heard of in my fucking life. So let me go through. Jonita Ecker, Sharon Von Etten, and Angel Olsen. So, I mean, here's either Elton's trying to sound cool and in touch with music, which we know he is. I mean, he's done collaborations with everybody. He's not afraid to do remixes of his songs. He's definitely one of the most tuned in and in touch people. So I don't think he's trying, but he does know what's going on in music. But don't try and throw us this stuff if we're not buying it, Elton. What I want to know, he says, is why aren't they there? Because of people like me. So here's the list at the moment. The best-selling albums of all time in the UK, all right? Number 10 is Queen's Greatest Hits 2. Number 9 is Michael Jackson's Bad. Number 8 is Dire Straits' Brothers in Arms. 7 is Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon. 6 is Michael Jackson, Thriller. That gives him 2 in the top 10. Oasis, What's the Story, Morning Glory at number 5. Adele comes in at 21 with, at number 4 with 21. The Beatles Only at number 3 with Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Heart Club Band, and then number 2 is ABBA's Gold. Number 1 is Queen's Greatest Hits. So how's that? What does that tell you?
Make good music. Good music is timeless. We must not be like, we must see fresh blood and new blood. Hey, hey, ha, ha. No, artists need to make good music. Adele's on that list, and she's,
Right.
a 21st century artist. So, like, artists just really need to put in the work, and they'll get appreciated for it. Point blank, period. If we like your songs, we like them for eternity.
You'll assume that in your top 10 list, you're going to have classics, i.e., artists who've been around for a long time. And so the fact that, as you say, one of the 10% of that list is a new artist or relatively new artist, I think that's quite impressive. I'm not sure this argument holds water. I think let's look in 30, 40 years' time. That top 10 list might have 3 or 4 more, maybe even 2 or 3 more, slightly more modern people, and that would make sense as well. It's very unlikely you're going to have 4 artists from the last 25 years in a top 10 list of all-time greatest owned albums. Yeah, no, I'm not sure this is a thing.
I like it. All right, so we've got to talk a little bit about something that is important to all of us: being healthy, feeling healthy, eating healthy, doing things that are healthy. We want to live as long as possible. We want to live in the best possible condition because, man, I've seen a lot of my people that I love and respect let themselves go during lockdown. And I also think people are so unsure of what they should and shouldn't do and what they should and shouldn't eat. And frankly, I'm always happy to hear from anybody who's got a little bit of good advice for us. So we've got Vanessa Asenshaw, who's going to join us in a moment. She's a dynamic, inspiring, and highly qualified nutritional consultant. She's also a health and wellness expert. She spent 15 years studying, researching, and working with some of the greatest minds in metaphysics, nutrition, and health. And she's helped celebrities, she's helped business executives, and other people transform their lives through a unique mind-body approach to health and nutrition. And she's here to give us some immune-boosting tips, which is terrific, especially at this time of year. There are still, on my clock, a month and a half of winter proper that we have to get through. And if you haven't got sick yet, well done. I got my kind of annual cold and flu bout somewhere in May. And then it seems to have abated for some time. But you can never be too sure. So, Vanessa, it's great to have you on the show. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
What a pleasure. It's nice to see you on the show. And as I was saying, this is something that we're all thinking about all of the time. So tell us a little bit about you before we get into some nutritional and health information.
So I've been in the health industry for about 25 years, and I studied in New York. So I did my Master's of Nutrition in New York, and I studied with Patrick Holford at the School of Integrated Nutrition. And my mom had a ovarian tumor, which was considered inoperable. And she decided to go to a lady in Johannesburg, Dr. Theo Avramidis, who put her on a whole protocol of basically just changing her nutrition, working on her emotional state, which is very, very powerful contributor to your well-being. A lot of us don't recognize the power of just, holding resentment, anger, all those kinds of things, how they contribute metaphysically to your health.
Definitely.
Yes, 100%. And then, so she, after a year of treatment with this doctor, she went to her oncologist and they said it was spontaneous remission. There was no tumor. They couldn't believe it. So she started on the journey in the health industry. She was one of the first women in South Africa to own a healthcare company called BioHarmony at the time. So I grew up with a lot of awareness. I mean, my lunch boxes were, not at all the usual. We were quite strict at home. So I grew up in this industry and I've seen the most transformative with chronic illnesses, changes and transformations when you apply yourself to the basics, which is your nutrition, how you sleep, your relationships around you, your purpose in your life. Those things are transformative. So I'm a big believer still in looking at the body in a holistic way. And there is always a time and space for pharmaceutical intervention, but it cannot only be that.
So how can we refine our nutrition and our lifestyles to boost something like immunity? I mean, what can we do about that? Because everybody coming out of COVID, obviously, we were very aware of this. But colds and flu are something that we can avoid. And people talk about having a strong immune system. How do you boost that?
Okay, so it starts with the foundation. You know, nutrition is your foundation. So if you look at the things that deplete your immune system, it's inadequate sleep, high refined sugar, carbohydrates. If you have a blood sugar imbalance throughout the day, that weakens your immune system. If you're consuming a lot of sugar, it weakens your immune system by 70%. What we've learned from COVID, which is very interesting, is that the people that got very badly affected were those with metabolic issues. So, for example, if you had insulin resistance, pre-diabetes, diabetes, that seemed to cause a lot of issues, what we call cytokine storms, which is essentially where the immune system attacks itself and it goes into overdrive, causes death, organ damage, and obviously respiratory issues. So if you look at the foundation of nutrition, just eat as close to nature as possible. Very, very simple. Most of us are too sedentary to be eating a lot of sugars and carbohydrates and all of that. So predominantly 80% vegetables is my belief, 20% protein, and the rest you add a little bit of fat. If we could possibly even try and eat 2 meals a day versus 6 or 8 or 12, what many people eat the whole day from the time they wake up to the time they go to sleep, this will make a huge difference. So I'm a big fan of intermittent fasting. I see the immune benefits of it. I see that it controls your mood, your hormone, all of that. Very powerful. After nutrition, we go into supplementation. When we say boost our immune system, what we're essentially saying is that we want to support the immune system with key nutrients, like, for example, a lot of us take zinc and vitamin C. 100% are essential nutrients that help modulate the immune system. Do you believe in extras like spirulina? I'm a big, big believer in spirulina. Spirulina's got over 1,800 peer-reviewed scientific studies showing its benefits for the immune system, for energy, to reduce inflammation. Now, at the root cause of just about every illness is inflammation. So we want to systematically reduce inflammation, helps control blood sugar levels, very, very good for athletic performance. So this is like considered the most nutrient-dense food in the world. So that's a very, very powerful immune modulator. Most of us...
A lot of people don't know what spirulina is. I remember there was a stage in the 90s where it was all the rage. All anyone was talking about was spirulina. They were saying that if you don't have this in your diet, you are bound to be less healthy. This is a magic substance. Just tell us what it is, because I don't think a lot of people even know what spirulina is necessarily.
Sure. So spirulina is the oldest life force in the world, the oldest food in the world. It's been around for over 3.5 billion years. And what puts spirulina on the map is algae, and it's grown in water and in lakes, everything. So what put spirulina on the map was NASA used to give spirulina to its astronauts in space missions, and they did successfully. So because it's so nutrient dense, you are able to survive on it. So what most of us lack is we lack nutrients. We consume a lot of calories, but we're not consuming nutrients. So when we supplement, we need to be very strategic with regards to making sure that we're getting the nutrients that our biochemistry needs. Most of us are completely deficient in nutrients. We can be very overweight, probably obese, and we have high body fat with no nutrients. So I always try and assist people, like instead of focusing on macros and calories, try and eat in a way that gives you nutrients. So the body functions with nutrients specifically. Calories is just a form of energy. So you create energy the more you eat, and you lose energy the less you eat. What we want to focus on is nutrition. So NASA gave the astronauts spirulina as a form of nutrition that they could survive on. Just to give you an idea, Gareth, spirulina, for 3 grams of spirulina, which is essentially 1 teaspoon, has more antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties than 5 to 6 servings of vegetables. So for those of us who are completely, eating badly, not getting enough nutrients, spirulina is like body armor.
It's incredible. I think, a lot of us are trying to find, I mean, Alan and Simpiwe, you can join in here too, because we're all trying to find out what that balance is. And obviously, if you can take the right supplements, which I think is primary here, in the mornings, you mentioned vitamin C, you mentioned zinc. I mean, I try to just take a very simple regimen of things just to make sure that the body's got all the stuff that it needs. Because if those ingredients aren't in the food that you're eating, you are in a lot of trouble. Obviously, if you're eating the right food, you don't need to take so many supplements. But who does? Because these days we don't know what's in the food and nobody actually reads the packaging. Do you? Alan? Simpiwe, do you read the packaging?
You're talking to a man who has an awful diet. So this is interesting. It really is interesting. And also also when you're performing or you're up early as you are or up late as I am, and you're eating, intermittent fasting happens out of necessity. I just don't have time, or then load all the food in 2 hours between 3 and 5 in the morning when I finally get to sleep. It's no good. It's no good to nobody. I'm taking spirulina now. I'm going to just grab a bucket of it and bath in it at 10 o'clock in the morning.
So hang on. What form does the spirulina take, Vanessa? Is it tablets? Is it a powder?
Tablets.
What do you do?
Yeah, so Marcus Rohrer spirulina is the one I personally take and I recommend to my clients because, Gareth, you want to be careful where the spirulina is grown and where it comes from. So Hawaiian spirulina is considered to grow in biosecure zones, which means that there's no heavy metals, no toxicity, no PCBs, mercury, etc. You get spirulina growing in dodge places in China. And I think any supplement that anybody takes, you should get the certificate of analysis to ensure, especially if you're taking things like fish oil, spirulina, that you are ensured that it comes from a region that is safe and free of PCBs, mercury, etc. So spirulina, because it's an algae, it absorbs its environment. So you want to ensure that whatever it's like, if you're eating animal protein, you eat what the animal eats. It's the same with algae. So if spirulina is absorbing high contamination in its environment, you will then consume this. So Marcus Rohrer spirulina is essentially Hawaiian spirulina, and it's in a biosecure zone. And it comes in little tablets. They're really, really small. So what's interesting is spirulina is actually alive, and it comes in this beautiful blue bottle. It's a Viasol glass. It's a technology that's been developed that if you, for example, take fresh lavender or a fresh herb and you put it into this Viasol glass, it will stay fresh. So where the spirulina comes, you must never buy spirulina in plastic because it oxidizes the spirulina, and the spirulina then absorbs whatever's in the plastic, right? So you want to ensure that it's in a Viasol glass, which is the Hawaiian spirulina in a blue Viasol glass. And this keeps the freshness and the integrity of the spirulina because it oxidizes very, very quickly. And it's a beautiful green color. I usually take about 10 in the morning. They're super small. Some people take 30. I'm happy with the 10. And when you start off with say 5 or 6, but they're super small. And this helps your body because you can go through a detox because it removes all the heavy metals out of the body. So some people feel a little bit nauseous, or they get headaches, or they have some kind of detox reaction. And this is a good sign because it's absorbing heavy metals. It also assists with liver function, all of that. So it's good to start off with 5 or 6 and never use, as I said, it's essential never to use spirulina that comes in plastic because it absorbs its environment.
Wow, that's amazing stuff to know. I didn't realize that like the packaging and everything else is important here too. Yeah. All right, just because we've only got a little bit of time left, and I really wanted to get some good advice from you here quickly. How can you stop an unhealthy habit like eating too much sugar, which we're all guilty of at some point, right? I mean, how do you stop that and make a permanent change?
Okay, so each one of us, if I give you, for example, 5 steps to do something, what stops us from doing it? And it's not, I can't tell you anything you don't already know, right? So I can tell the general public, stop eating sugar. The reason why we don't is it's because of the mind. So it's a habit. And what we have to do is we have to want to invest in our health a lot. So most people will change only when they get sick, right? So no one does preventative medicine or looking, how am I going to eat for longevity? Very few of us do that. So until you get a diagnosis, you often don't change. So you have to want it, and you have to mentally apply the principles of doing whatever it is you want to do, whether it's, stopping drinking alcohol, stopping smoking, whatever it is. So you have to make the decision. And I believe in the cold turkey method. So in my clients, the most successful people are the ones that they make the decision mentally, and within 3 or 4 days, Gareth, you can get off sugar and have absolutely no symptoms. The rest is just habit. So you almost need like psychiatry interventions if you are unable to do it yourself, if that makes sense. It's a very delicate situation. But in terms of physiology, 3 to 4 days, you can stop sugar if you just apply it. And what you do is you balance your blood sugar levels. So you take berberine. This helps control your blood sugar levels. You eat enough fats and animal protein at each meal. This controls your blood sugar levels. Protein is the most satiating nutrient. So you want to ensure adequate protein so that you don't crave. A lot of us are eating snacks, and this is what makes our body crave a lot of sugar. So berberine, which is a natural supplement, and then adequate nutrition. So eat 2 to 3 meals, no snacks, protein, vegetables, and fat, and you're golden. Just have to do it mentally, though,
Love it. This is very, very useful info. I'm sorry that we've run out of time, because I would have liked to have asked you a whole lot more, but this is very interesting. The spirulina, I love this, and I it's great to have a refresher on like what spirulina does, because I haven't even heard that term for a long time, which means that I've been out of it for a little while. But it's great to have you refresh us on things like supplements, having a healthy diet, breaking bad habits. These are things we need to keep on top of. Thank you, Vanessa. It's great to see you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Vanessa Senshao, who is with us this morning. And we've got a whole lot more heading for you in the next hour. We've got, among other things, Gilli Apter will be joining us, who's terrific. We love Gilli. She's going to be dropping in for a little bit. Alan Committie is with us, and Simpiwe Mtetwa. We've got lots to do. Stick around, cliffcentral.com on a Wednesday morning.
This week on the Auto Trader podcast.
So we have a product on Auto Trader called Vehicle Check.
Well, that's not it's not a physical inspection, right? It's a history check.
It's a history check. So this is, and I think it's important to note that is something completely different. However, how does that work? So that looks at the vehicle's VIN data, and then whatever data is captured about the car, we try and gather. Catch us every Monday at 9 a.m. on YouTube and on autotrader.co.za.
Suffer from collectivism?
I started collecting when I was about 8 years old.
Do you have an obsession with objects?
I sort of got into collecting TV cars.
Are you a fanatic? A devotee? Are you someone exhibiting enthusiasm or strong passion?
when lockdown hit, when everyone was kind of bored at home, they started Googling, like, what are these things worth these days?
Cliff Central dispenses a weekly dose of collectomania. Join me as I talk to compulsive collectors. Fascinating.
The frame's total value is probably about 12,000 rand.
Possibly a little weird.
I developed this infatuation with the Statue of Liberty.
Collectomania, Mondays on the Gareth Cliff Show. Brought to you by SA Gold Coin Exchange and the Scoin Shop. Yeah, boy, it's Wednesday morning. We've got Alan Committie with us, which is terrific. It's good to see him in his natural habitat full of DVDs. And Simpiwe Mthethwa in the studio in Johannesburg. And we're waiting for your comments as well in the comment section. You can join us on YouTube or on Instagram or on Facebook or on Twitter. It's all streaming live. Okay, let's get stuck into a few things. We've got, as I mentioned, Gilli Apter joining us a little bit later on. Alan, you said that things are getting back to normal in terms of theaters opening and all the rest. What are you doing at the moment in terms of your own entertainment? I mean, like, have you been watching a lot of shows? Have you been getting out there?
Yes, I have actually. I try to do that anyway. I think that's important. If we as artists are not supporting or watching stuff, I'm not sure how we can complain that the public isn't.
Yeah, it would be a real hypocrisy if you sat at home going, "Oh, no one supports the arts except me," and then.
Except it's quite weird how many people don't support. You know, there are a lot of people who don't go and watch stuff. I also think it's part of what we do. Listen, comics are quite good in this country. I think they tend to, because one of the ways to get better is to watch others and learn from the good and the bad.
Right.
So I've been seeing a lot of stuff. And then just in terms of my own entertainment, I have actually spent a lot of time in cinema. I do like going to the cinema. I still like that. And during lockdown, or certainly in the easier parts of lockdown, it's been fantastic because it's often been just me in that cinema. In fact, I can throw my pop all over the floor and eat it off the floor. That's how clean it is. It's fantastic. I've been doing a bit of that.
Now I know who went to that cinema before me and made it look like someone had a temper tantrum or an apoplectic fit in there.
Correct. Exactly. And then I did start watching, which has been on my watch list for a while, is The Offer, which is it's based on the making of The Godfather, which I'm really loving. I'm kind of binge-watched 4 or 5 episodes the other day. It's a great period in cinematic history. Of course, in the kind of early 60s, some brilliant films were made, but this is a really wonderful recreation of it, and I'm enjoying every moment.
Yeah, there's some good series out at the moment. A lot of what we do on the shows, everybody kind of says you got to watch this series, and then we all kind of help each other out with the next one. You know, there's always something great going on that if you don't hear from someone you trust, you just don't bother to figure it out, and then you end up watching the
now. It's not even about do you know what series. It's about which platform. Do you know this platform? And then people, how do I know about that platform? Never mind all the stuff that's on the platform.
And all these subscriptions that we suddenly are supposed to have. You know, if you need to be a millionaire just to be able to afford all the different streaming platforms.
And then the choice that you have, I will look at, I think I've got vaguely and quickly counted down on my Netflix watch list. I think it's about 800 hours of stuff that I've got to get through. Then you've got Amazon, blah, blah, blah. And you look at all of that, you spend 3 minutes going through everything that's available, and then you end up watching The Chase. Or, you know, really pathetic, you know, or a mindless quiz show that'll just take you out of your own depression for 25 minutes.
Yeah, Simpiwe, what are you watching?
I haven't watched anything like in terms of like series. The last good series that I watched, and I think I loved it, was Anatomy of a Scandal. Just because it blurred on the consent lines, like that consent has a gray area, and they kind of delve into that to say, sometimes consent is not as black and white as we think it is. So that was the last great like series I binged, and I was like, oh, this is. Everyone needs to watch it. Watch that and you'll be good. And there's drama.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Very, very good. So here's a little compliment for Vanessa, who we just had on. Rose says, I've been listening for many years, but this is my first comment. Keep up the amazing program. Thanks, Gareth. Well, it's nice that you finally joined us, Rose. Ethan says, did the film about a young Tony Soprano ever come out? I'm not sure about that. Does anybody know?
I think it did come out. I don't think it got a lot of time on our cinemas because it was seen as quite an arty thing, but I think you can find it on some streaming services. I forget the name of it. And it's quite good.
Okay.
So listen, I can ask you this because you will remember A, and B, you might have something to say about him. But Barry Wrongner died like 2 weekends ago. Now, I explained this to a friend of mine. He had no idea who Barry Wrongner was. Then I spoke to someone else about it. She's 26. She was like, I don't know who that is. And
I don't know either.
I know you don't know who he was. And I thought like maybe Alan would be able to say something about Barry because he used to be an institution. This guy was, first of all, he could make or break a movie, which was incredible. He was like Rogers and what was the
Ebert and
Roger and Ebert. Yeah. There were these two guys in America who used to review movies. And if they said a movie was good, everybody in America would go and see it. And if they said a movie was shit, no one would go and see it. So they had that kind of power. And remember in those days, he got to see previews of movies, and so he would warn us in advance, this is a piece of shit. And I mean, you didn't always agree. Like I never really liked the movies that Barry liked, but a lot of people listened to him. And he was an influential writer. He was the host of TV shows. I mean, he was probably the first multimedia kind of star in the country, even though it wasn't a big thing,
He was extraordinary, and I think you and I'm 48. It's that era. He used to write for the Sunday Times. He had a kind of editorial. He was our kind of Stephen Fry as well, because besides all his great skills, he was unbelievably erudite. He had a knowledge across huge areas, and he somehow was able to interlace a little bit of philosophy with pop culture, with music. A lovely guy, sweet man.
His column was called Spit and Polish with Barry Wrongner. And Barry, Spit and Polish, which was in the Sunday Times, but he was a bit like Stephen Fry. Yeah, I think that's a good comparison. I mean, and he
made a good point as well about whether you agreed with him or not in terms of his reviews, particularly. He did offer a kind of basis. So if you knew that you tended not to agree, at least you then knew, well, this is a movie I should see or not, because he gave us consistency. That was his thing. He was unbelievable. He had a consistent lens through which he reviewed everything. And he was also very brilliantly generous to young performers in a sense of offering them space. He would go and see theatre works or young filmmakers' works and reference them. So, he did all the right things. He was a really lovely guy.
Yeah, I wonder, though, if there's anybody who's doing that kind of work in the arts at the moment, because, theatre needs so many moving parts to work. And I'll admit that I've kind of fallen off the wagon. I never really, I've never been one of those people who like musicals. I don't like one act or one man plays. It's not really my thing. I mean, I like everyone else in the country, I have seen Defending the Caveman. I mean, I saw that years ago, and I think it was with Tim Plewman. And I have no doubt that it continues to enthrall audiences, and that the shows that you're involved in, like Love Factually now, are great crowd pleasers. And I'm not really the target market here because I'm a grumpy, miserable son of a bitch. And I don't even like Marvel movies. So, what chance do you can't get me out of the house is the point.
That's
So I'm not going, it's no reflection on theatre necessarily, but to get me out of the house, it has to be a really good reason. And I think that theatre needs people like Barry and people like you and people who are multi-talented, who can do comedy, who can do Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, these kinds of things, and across a broad spectrum to attract the interest from a crowd. And it's hard because you don't want to live in a society where people feel that they are shame. We must support the arts. They must do it because they want to.
Absolutely. And it is getting harder. There is so much noise out there in the world now. What used to be, when we were growing up, there was 2 newspapers that you wanted to read. There was maybe 1 or 2 radio stations you wanted to listen to, and maybe 3 channels that you could watch. Well, now it's multi-stream, multi-platform, so many books. Everyone's talking. Everyone's got a podcast. So to make it stand out, you've got to do something special. I would argue that theatre, when done well, it's not often done well, but when done well, is literally life transformative because it has that energy that is specific to that evening. It should, when done well, move you in a way that will make you come back. But to get people to the theatre is one of the questions that has been bandied around now for hundreds of years, not just in this country, around all communities and countries.
For all time. I mean, this is one of the most ancient forms of entertainment, and it does. Like, if it hits you right in the heart, you know.
Yeah,
and
in a good way. It doesn't have to be. You don't have to cry or feel like your life is. You can just laugh yourself into a transformative state, literally. So something live. It's this thing of going to watch a live concert or listening to a CD or something on a music platform. You know, there is the difference of engaging and being present when your favorite musician is doing the thing in front of you in a way that you won't feel when you're sitting at home and listening to it on your earphones. But it's, as you say, getting people out of the house. And of course, post-pandemic, even I, as a performer, go, oh,
yeah, I know.
Can't we just get them all
We've
here?
become lazy. We've become lazy.
Yes.
And I mean, people are too lazy to even go to the office in some places. They're like, oh, no. Really? I mean, this is a big problem in America at the moment. People are quitting their jobs because their boss has the temerity to ask them to actually come into the office. They're like, oh, well, then I just won't come in.
Yeah.
Really? It's happening. So let me ask you two some advice. My brother suggested the other day that we do like a family board game thing. I love my family. I get on with them very well. I don't need to necessarily be forced to play board games with him, but this is something he wants to do, so I'm going to go along with it. Yeah. And it'll also be good. Like he's got 2 kids, and I see that like for them to learn how to play games and be a good sport and all that shit, and to see people interacting in a fun way isn't necessarily good. I mean, when we were kids, we used to play board games with our folks, and my dad used to cheat all the time, and that was part of the fun, is that he'd say, I'm not cheating. Meanwhile, he was hiding a whole lot of whatever. I mean, it was so obvious. But I'm kind of confused as to what games we might be playing. What are the board games that are even available at the moment? What do people do? Is there anyone who's listening to us now who plays these board games? What would you suggest we start with? How do I stop myself from getting bored? And what are the like the shortcuts and the clues here? Because I don't know where to start. I haven't played a board game in ages.
Well, Gareth, you'll be glad to know that like Wordle is being turned into a board game. I don't know if we'll have it in South Africa anytime soon, but hey, that might be a new board game that you want to check out in a few months. But Wordle is being turned into a board game. But I think how you should go about it is get a whole lot of tequila. You guys are adults. Just get drunk.
Oh my God.
Don't even try. And then you play like 30 seconds a bit tipsy, but everyone gets competitive. That's like the only real board game that a lot of people enjoy.
30 seconds is always a win.
30 seconds is correct. And it reveals lots about the people playing it and under pressure. It's fun. I had a friend, she was quite stuck up and constricted. She was a partner of friends of ours. And we were playing 30 seconds and she got unbelievably stressed out. And she was looking at the name. She went, she's a sanctimonious bitch. And it turns out she was talking about Mother Teresa.
Angry, eh? Wow.
Yes. Yeah. So, we learn things about each other.
All right. There are a couple of things, though, that I have to put in here as caveats. First of all, I like to win, so I'm going to have to hold back on my...
That's a problem.
My desire to win above all else, because it doesn't make you a fun person to play games with. No. Second of all, that is particularly pronounced in a board game called Risk, which, again, I haven't played for a long time. But Risk is basically about world domination. You have armies, you fight with the dice, the roll of the dice, and you take over territories and all of that stuff. I take Risk super seriously, and I'm not very much fun to play with. So I think that one is out of the question. Monopoly is fun because it also teaches you about basic like economics.
But it's long.
It's long. That's the problem.
It's long. Doesn't end. That game does not end. Like everyone just needs to be like, I'm done. Like Monopoly.
So
what's the one where you make up the definition? Balderdash. Balderdash is quite fun.
Oh, that's where you make up a definition for words.
Yes. And so you try and do it as the game loosens up. People become a bit sillier with it, and that's where it becomes quite fun. Yeah,
Steve says Monopoly is a test of character. I think that's about right. And this proves to you like someone who is a shit person before they have money will be a shit person when they have money, and vice versa if you're a good person,
Yeah.
It's not necessarily a board game. What's this Heads Up? That's also nice
that's
to play.
cool. That's
yes, that's a cool game to play with people. I think that might be a winner. It's not as competitive, but you get to be competitive.
Says Cards Against Humanity, which is hilarious. But again, if we're playing with the kids, they won't get it. So that's definitely that's one for the adults.
I was taught backgammon for the first time about a month ago. Quite fun.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Have you played?
No, I've seen people playing it, like old Greek men in coffee shops.
Yeah. So, because chess for me, you know, I was playing chess with a friend the other day, and he said to me, "Shall we make this interesting?" I said yes, and so we stopped playing chess. It was better that way. But backgammon strikes me as slightly more kind of intriguing, the strategy, and it's quicker and easier than chess as well.
Hey, I decided stupidly to take on a friend of mine at chess, just in a, we were kind of, we've got like 20 minutes to kill. Let's see how this goes. We were waiting at a party or something, and he just destroyed me in like 4 moves. And I suddenly realized, like, if you don't practice that game, there's just no way. You can't just get, it's not like getting on a bicycle and, oh no, I can ride this bike. You are screwed if you haven't practiced chess for a long time. You have to be on top of that. 30 Seconds and Monopoly are my favorites, says Snake. I'm just impressed people play board games. I didn't even know people were. So it's not just my brother.
Yeah, I forgot the other game. The one that you build. Why am I forgetting it? It's
Jenga.
Yes, that's also a good one. That will get the heart beating. Like
you pull the blocks out and you try not to
yes.
That's not a bad one. Parallel Parking says backgammon is fantastic for showing how you really are in life, and it gives you the opportunity to expand and change your tendencies. What do you mean? It's just moving, what do you mean? It's moving little things around.
So what I discovered and was taught by the person who plays it was very good, is that it really is about how attacking or defensive are you, and it reflects kind of the kind of person you are, whether it's in the business world or even in your personal life. Do you go on the defensive? When do you take the opportunities to attack? And essentially the 4 blocks, all the business happens in the 2 middle blocks, where both partners are trying to, because once it's no point if you haven't played it, but once you pass each other, you can't go back, as it were. So it's quite an interesting thing about making choices and decisions, and when to attack and when not to.
So a lot of good suggestions coming in here. I quite like the idea of Uno, because the kids already play Uno, but they play a version of Uno that my sister and her boyfriend taught them, where if you put down like a +8 and +4, and then the poor person has to pick up like a whole bunch of cards, you must go wah, so that it's me. They call it wah Uno. So the kids already know how to play that, and it's quite funny because then you see them like being mean to each other and going, "Wah, you just have to pick up 20." The other one's like, "Oh," so that's quite fun. I like that idea. Cranium. I don't know about Cranium. I've never played Cranium. Anyone play Go? I don't even know what that is. Sorry. Jenga is another suggestion to go with you, Simpiwe. And Dogozo says he's proud. He destroyed his girlfriend in chess the other day. She refuses to play with me now.
Fun. No.
Daniel says here in Dubai, board game cafes are quite popular. It's crazy to see the range of table games out there. That's awesome.
Oh, nice.
You see, this stuff does happen. In Greece, that's all they do is play backgammon, says Rob. Yeah, it's true.
Okay.
There's a game called Buraplas. If you can still get it. No, I don't believe you.
No.
No. That's excellent. All right, so suddenly we've awoken all the people who love board games. This is cool. Okay, so I think we must do this. I must change my attitude. I'm going to do it, and it's going to be fun.
We should just call it like a games night, and that's all you guys get up to, and have like a bunch of games lined up.
I don't know.
Just in case.
I don't know if it's always going to work. Like sometimes you're going to have a shitty game. Sometimes someone's not going to be a good sport, but that's part of it, right?
Part of it, exactly.
Yes, and it's good to switch things up. So if the one is like taking forever, if you have Monopoly as like the starter, then you do something else.
Oh my God, man, you can't play more than one. You'll be there all night. I don't want to spend that time. I see enough of my family. Thank you very much. Hey. Dominoes. Who still does dominoes? Vanessa says dominoes is a good time, but playing the colored way causes more rifts in the family. Oh, okay, so that's probably not a good way. I don't know what the colored way of playing dominoes. Someone fill me in. Vanessa, come on, help us there. Robin says, no screaming and put your thinking caps on. Okay, Robin sounds like very headmistress-like.
Very rules. Right from the
there will be no screaming, and you will put your thinking caps on, children.
Yeah. Okay, so look, I needed to ask you that because I don't know where to start with this stuff, and now I can at least go in prepared. I've got some ideas now. Monopoly after smoking some weed is a lot of fun, says Ntogozo. I don't know.
The game drags. Doesn't it drag? No.
You know who's a big board game guy is Rich Mulholland. And there are all kinds of really, really involved and complicated and very thoughtful, novel, interactive board games that have come out recently. I don't know anything about that world. And I mean, all these games that we've spoken about this morning are more or less within kind of my ambit. I know what they are. I've played them at least once, some of them anyway. The ones that I didn't know, I said I don't know. But there are this range of board games that he plays with his family as well. But it's incredible. Some of them are hugely intricate and involve like the kind of stuff that you'd probably need a computer for, but they have cards and they have, little moving things, and the board is very complex, and you go up and down and left and right and all kinds of things there. And I've got to get him to explain this. He's invited me to a board game night, and I think I was busy that week or whatever, so I didn't get to go to it. Now he lives in Cape Town, so I'll have to go down there to play. And I don't think I would fly to Cape Town for a board game, but it sounds to me like it's really, really interesting. And he swears it's the best way to entertain the family. Do you play charades?
Charades is fun.
I used to, with friends. So we don't have like a board games. We have more like a games night with my friends every so often, and then it just ends up turning into a drinking match. But we do set up some we do set up like a string of games to play. So we'll do beer pong, we'll do 30 seconds, we'll do Jenga as I mentioned, and then every time we link up we'll like look.
You do beer pong first, the rest are not going to work.
Yeah, then the rest don't really matter.
Yeah, I mean, we're learning how to do this thing correctly, guys. But like that's what we get up to in terms of like, instead of not going to the clubs, just hanging out with friends, and it's always a good time. Like it's always a good time. So yeah, and we spend hours but 30 seconds is the one. It will end friendships. 30 seconds. If you can't describe, don't be part of my team.
Well, you see, you're competitive like me. So if I don't have the best partner, or if I have someone who's not, because you get people who might not have a good general knowledge, but they're in sync, right?
Yeah.
And they can read each other's minds. They're on the same sense of humor. They've got the same level of kind of intuition. Those people can win even if they don't know a damn thing, because they'll use sounds like, and they'll use.
They're annoying.
They'll
annoy me.
Yeah,
and more fun is when two friends give each other the wrong clues and get the right answer.
No, that
capital of India, Uruguay, yes, and it is Uruguay. Then that's just what we go, what's the point of this game now?
Oh no, but you know what's worse is when they're like, we had it yesterday. That sound, that scent that I don't like. Well, like no one gets these.
With its personal story, and we're like,
yes,
that?
What's that? Yeah, they're like, oh, it's my favorite movie. We don't know you. What's your favorite movie? And then the one person's like, oh, like Troy, and we're like, girl. Okay.
There were a group of comedians played once. I remember this. Mark Banks, we played 30 seconds, and Mark Banks got a clue, and his clue to us was made lofts popular. And the answer was Anne Frank, which I thought
what a nasty thing to say. He's brilliant. He's a lunatic, but he's brilliant.
He's a lunatic, a madman that way.
I would love to watch a game of 30 seconds between a whole bunch of comedians. I think that would be hilarious.
It does go to fantastic levels, which is great.
Oh man. Yeah, look, the problem is often if you do some of these things with boring people, it
still stays boring.
Like anything, if you're with the wrong people, it's a disaster.
Exactly.
That's true for going away on holiday. It's true for parties. It's true for board games. It's true for dinners. It's true for everything. The wrong people. There's sometimes this is another like skill that I think I'm getting better and better at is putting the right people together, because if you do develop that skill and if you work at it very consistently, you think about, like, I'm inviting these 3 guys and these 3 girls, and I think even though they don't know each other at all, I think they'll get along and it works.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, look at that. That's working. That I like a lot. I love when you can see like people's they're laughing about the same things. There's a definite like connection out of nowhere. I love that. That's my favorite thing to see.
And I think the other thing as we get older is that you just want less drama in terms of, you know, when you're younger, you don't mind. It's quite interesting to have someone who's going to cause the rift or disrupt, but sometimes you kind of go, yeah, just want to have a good time. So I'm thinking, particularly in work, when I'm casting shows now, there might be the absolute brilliant person that we all know can do this in his sleep or her sleep, but is hard work off stage. And we're going to have to spend 3 months with him back. So actually, you know what? I'd rather go with the guy who's going to be okay, but he's a delight off stage and a pleasure to be around. So, yeah. The right people are very important.
So Ella says, if you want to die, get stuck in the lift with Mark Bankson and Pop Pops, because that's about right. So speaking of people who make us laugh and who make us feel good, here's Gilli Apter. Hey, Gilli. How are you?
Gilli.
Listen, where in the world are you at the moment? Because
first, can I just say, when Alan was saying like he prefers comedians who aren't that good on stage but are fun backstage, I
that's why I got Gilli to come to Cape Town. My show. She was tremendous backstage. What a seat!
The comedy's already started. How are you doing?
I'm good. I've been to a lot of places.
You probably have more stamps in your passport than anyone else since COVID.
I do. Last night I was talking to some friends who told me they hadn't been on a plane in 3 years, and I have been on more planes in the last 2 years than I've been in my entire life. I think I counted
your life, girl.
Yeah, I think I've been on I've done 40 flights this year.
Wow.
Jesus. Well done. That's amazing.
I don't know if that's well done. I'm starting
you're probably so used to planes at the moment that you scratch a nest in the chairs and just fall asleep straight away.
Not at all. I haven't become any more accustomed to sleeping in discomfort. You'd be amazed at how my need for like total comfort and luxury at all times just never goes away. It never goes away. It's horrible. Well, I see people all around me. On planes, I see people all around me just fast asleep, and it makes me, not only can I not sleep, it makes me
furious.
Angry. I just walk past them and
So listen, some of these places that you performed and some of these gigs that you were doing are pretty wild. I mean, I saw on your Instagram that you were at some incredible venues. You were on stage with some amazingly well-known people. I mean, it's really been a tour de force for you. Fantastic stuff.
I've done a lot of stuff. I have like two or three tours that are booked, that are planned, and everything in between I'm kind of going on my own steam just to check out new comedy scenes. Checking out that's what I did between the tour that I had in Canada, which was planned. I had a month and a half, and I thought, let me use that time to try and see new places, see where else it's possible for me to do comedy, just because I felt like I just need more access. I need access to more comedy. I need it to be more available to me. In South Africa, our comedy scene is like very, very, I mean, it was small before COVID, and now it's even smaller. And it'll grow, but it's going to take a long time, and I need to talk about what's in here now. I
think a lot of people don't realize about you and Alan and a lot of other very talented comics is that you guys have to research a lot of the time too. Your research is actually watching other people. Do you climb on stage sometimes at a club when there's an open mic and just go for it to see what you can do?
That's all I do. What do you mean?
Yeah, but I mean, like without any, you don't go to the place and decide there and then, is what I'm saying. You go there with the intention of going on stage. But have you ever been in the crowd and they've gone like, oh, okay, open mic, and you thought, fuck, let me just go for it, and you test out some material in them?
Yeah, I test out material all the time, but it's never like I never go up there and just start talking randomly. Like I never just start saying things I've never said before. That's very rare.
You've got a plan in your head every time.
I've got a plan, even if I develop that plan like 5 minutes before I go on stage, but it's a plan of jokes that I already have. It's never a plan like of things I've just invented. Sometimes and often the first thing that comes out of my mouth will have been something that just occurred to me in the moment about the room or whatever's happening there and then. Everything else is a combination of like jokes that I've done before, or that I've thought of before, or stuff that I want to work on, you know, ideas. But I will have thought about it at some point, even if it's in the car, you know.
So we got two comics for the price of one this morning. So it would be remiss of me to not ask you two about this, because it's probably been the most successful stand-up special of the year so far, is this Ricky Gervais one, which everyone's talking about, and I'm sure you've both seen it. And I just want to know what you think of where he is, what you think of that show, whether you think it's overhyped or whether you think it's absolutely brilliant, because everyone's in awe of Ricky Gervais, even though he's pretty much doing what he did before. It's the same style. He hasn't changed at all, but he is saying some things that don't go down too well in some audiences. What do you guys actually think of him, and where do you think all of it's going? Because clearly breaking the rules is something that's going back into the world of comedy. And, you know, Dave Chappelle's broken a whole lot of rules. Ricky Gervais is too. This is part of what you guys do. You're social commentators. What do you make of it?
Well, I'm a huge fan of him as a writer. I loved all his TV stuff, going obviously starting with The Office, but going into extras and all that. The man's incredible. I would suggest, humbly, that his stand-up stuff. I don't know that he's a great example of an excellent stand-up. He's a fine example of a good performer, and he's an excellent example of someone who has built such a strong comedy base because he has such a clear perspective and a consistent perspective that I think it's translated into a huge following who've accepted that whatever he's saying is fantastically funny. For me, I call it that high school syndrome. If you're funny in grade 8, by the time you get to matric, anything you say or do, we now just assume funny. You don't actually have to be funny anymore. We just go, oh, that's the funny guy. And he's at that point. So I would say this last stand-up special wasn't particularly strong as a well-written hour of material. There were lots of funny things in it. I would say it was a bit underdeveloped in the topics that he tried to cover. There were moments of great interest. You want to go, oh, well, mine that more, dig deeper. But having said that, who cares what you think? What I think about him?
He said this one thing about AIDS, and I was watching it on my laptop, and I actually had to get up. I started like choking because I thought, oh, you cannot possibly get away with that. He really did go into places that I don't think a lot of people wanted him to, and I love that he did.
I don't know. I don't necessarily agree with Alan on the point of the. I absolutely think you're right. He does carry a lot of like cachet because of everything he's done. Totally agree with that. So that everything he does, like you say, is like, you know, whatever. And I've absolutely loved him as a stand-up. Funnily enough, until this last one, I also just did not think it was as good. I didn't think it was on par with any of the others, and I loved the one that came before it. I mean, I was mad about it. Like I thought it was truly excellent. And this one, when I watched it, exactly what you say, I felt like I saw the machine working. Yeah. You know, for me, it's actually quite easy to get lost sometimes in the very good. When people do a job that's so good, even I can get lost in it. But I couldn't get lost in this. I saw all the mechanics, and I was like, oh no, you were like, they're gonna pay me now to do this special. I'm just gonna go with what's ready now. Like that's what it felt like.
But you know, the man's brilliant, and he's fairly prolific. He's already working his next one. I saw Humanity live in London, and it was extraordinary watching it live as well. I mean, it was, as you say, it was an hour that didn't feel like work. You couldn't see the mechanics of it, and it kept surprising you with material. Yeah. But the thing I love about our industry is that there's a million roads to Rome, and there's not one way. So you don't have to always shock. You don't have to. You can shock us by not shocking us as well. And so, you know, he fits nicely into a bigger cog, and he does it very well, you know.
I can tell you, like, I have now not only performed all over the world, I've watched stand-up all over the world. Right. And, like, I've watched the most incredible acts from, you know, in New York, in London, in LA, and they all have something. There's no one style that you can go, oh, this style is funnier than anything else. Or this way of being more shocking is funny, or being like some of the funniest things I heard were from the most like subdued people you've ever seen, not even trying to shock anyone, can barely stand, be on the stage. I love
that when there's someone really nervous and kind of quiet and ferrety, and they suddenly come up with a line, and you think, Jesus, where did that come from? It's amazing.
I was at the Comedy Cellar. There's a guy who goes on at the Comedy Cellar who's like, he talks, you have to like concentrate so hard because he's speaking so slowly, and he's Swedish, and he's like, I do not know why I am a stand-up comedian. And that's how you listen to him talk for like 20 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Hilarious. The jokes are hilarious, you know? So it's like...
Do you guys, do you ever find that you're performing for the other comics and not for the audience sometimes? You have to watch that?
Yeah.
If you know that there's someone who's also a fellow comic, because I mean, like for example, it's bound to happen, right? You put a bunch of bodybuilders in a room and they all like showing off to each other. You put a bunch of scientists in the room, they're all trying to compete for who's the cleverest. It happens. This is what people do. So does that happen with you guys too when you're at a show? Obviously, then someone is going to be on the stage at any given time, and you know that those people in the audience. But does it also happen socially? And can it be very annoying if it does?
I think socially.
Sorry, I can tell you, like, it was a huge breakthrough in my stand-up when I realized that what I was doing was performing for comedians. Because what happens is when you start every night, that's who you are with every night. And it plays on your mind to understand that you are performing to comedians every night. And so I realized that that's what I was doing. And when I stopped doing it, it changed. It brought me back to what I was doing when I first, like, initially set foot on that stage, because you don't realize that it's happening to you. You start becoming part of a social group, and you start to please who's standing at the back of the room. And you're embarrassed if it doesn't work out in front of them. And then you quickly realize, oh, actually, the only people I have a responsibility to in this room is the audience.
Yeah, 100%. I think I started my comedy career in a very different way, in that it was always through theatre and solo shows. So I didn't have that pleasure. I did very little comedy clubs or comedy lineups. Now that I've been around for a bit, there is a pleasure in knowing that you can, as well as as Gilli suggests, take care of the audience and play to them. You can. So I host the Cape Town Funny Festival most years, and this year it was lovely to have Tats, who you've just toured Australia with, in the wings, and know that there were things that I would do just for him because we've just spoken about it, and and he would do likewise. So, but your first prerogative and obligation is to the audience and making sure that they're looked after.
At Alan's show in December, one night we had this audience that were just terrible. A terrible audience, and I think it was Nick. I don't know
what is a terrible? Just explain what a terrible audience is. It's sour.
You know what? It's rare. It's rare that I blame the audience, but I'll tell you. For me, a terrible audience is a conservative audience who are afraid to laugh. That's what it is for me. So it's this weird thing that happens when a group of people become like sits together. They form.
So they're just like, that's funny.
I can't tell you. It's a weird phenomenon. When you put a group of people in a room together, they suddenly become one entity. And you don't know who that entity is going to be until you set foot in front of them and open your mouth. And then they tell you who they are all of a sudden. I used to think like you can take a cold audience from being very cold to being a great audience. I think that's rare. I think sometimes the audience that's in front of you is the audience that's in front of you, and it's that personality. It's like meeting a person, and you have to deal with the person that's in front of you. And sometimes that person is not a great person. Sometimes the combination of people in the room just isn't right.
I mean, I've always had a problem with these people who go out, and Alan, this also goes for the theater. People who go out and they're like, oh, I don't want to be here. Try and entertain me. It's like this attitude of, and they really only do this with comedy. Some people arrive at the theater with a bad attitude, but really that's not.
Sometimes if you've got 100 people and 50 people are like 51 of those people have that attitude, it tips over into being a bad audience because it makes everybody else uncomfortable.
Sure. I listened to Bill Maher talking about this with somebody on a podcast the other day, and he was saying, I mean, he's also got to that stage that I think Alan was talking about with Ricky, where you've been around so long that people just assume that you're brilliant and funny, even if you're not always. And I mean, Bill's also, he's very political and he's extremely clever, and people know him, and he's got the celebrity edge, which I think helps enormous amount in Hollywood and in America generally. But Bill said he does blame the audience sometimes, because he said he knows he's tested that same joke out on like 15 different audiences, and then the one audience won't laugh. He says, it's fucking you. It's not me. It's you.
I could never blame the audience like for a long time. I didn't think I was good enough yet. There were too many variables in my performance to be able to then blame the audience. And then at some point, I will say in the last year, I've started to go, oh, I can tell when it's not a good audience, you know.
I when I do theatre runs of a comedy show, and we'll play 7 weeks in Cape Town, 10 weeks in Joburg. So by the end of that run, you've done 85 performances. You have a very good idea after 70 performances what works, what doesn't, and then you can go. 8 of the 10 variables are consistent. One of the 2 that isn't is the audience, and that's changing. So actually, maybe it is the audience in this case.
Yeah.
But you know, when I taught, I found that out quickly, Gilly, that any group of people bigger than 4 or 5 will take on a personality of the strongest person in that group. So the over curious kid, or the kid that's disrupting, or the very slow kids, or the very quiet kids will make the class that personality. And you have to deal with it because it becomes one entity. And what you did try and do is isolate the people who aren't that entity and try and get them to change the group dynamic.
And you know, but Alan is an absolute master at doing that. If you've never gotten to see Alan, you absolutely have to go watch this. You've never seen such masterful handling of the audience, almost all at the same time, and then individually somehow. It's like watching magic happen. It's unbelievable.
Nice. That's a nice thing to say. Yeah, I like that. But I think maybe you hinted at where that comes from, is like when you used to be a teacher. So you learn if you can get children to behave, you can get adults to behave.
100%. Yeah, that's the truth.
Yonder says, "Ooh, Gilli, great seeing you live here, and you just made it back from down under. So you were in Oz, you were in Canada, you were in the UK.
Where have you not been?"
I was in Canada. Yeah, I was in London. I was in New York. I was in LA. Then I was in Canada. Then I came back here. Then I went to Australia. Now I'm back here.
So which country? Because this is something I love to joke about with friends of mine who have emigrated, and who doesn't have someone who's emigrated to one of those countries, if not all of them. Which country is the most rule obsessed? Is it Canada or Australia at the moment? Which one do you think has more?
Good question. I will say this. I thought it was Canada. That everybody's very civil and incredibly polite.
Oh yeah.
But you know what? You know what's taught me a lot about the world is my airport experience. And I have to tell you, I've never had. If you know anything about travel right now, it's chaos. It's like people. I can't tell you. It looks like a refugee crisis in every airport. That's what it looks like. It's like you just walk. You see people crying beside you. You're just trying to make it to a gate and like leave. You know, it's every man for himself. You're just fighting with somebody over liquids in your bag. It's chaos. Okay, like I got spat out of a flight. A flight reversed. It reversed. I thought I was going to my destination. They were like, no, sorry. And they brought us back to the terminal, kicked us out into Montreal airport. And that's where I spent my next 24 hours just in Montreal trying to figure out what to do with my life. So that is the experience that is happening right now. And I have never had a more pleasant airport experience than Australian airports. And I've been to about 5 or 6 of them in the last 2 weeks. And that tells me something about their ability to follow rules and to be organized.
Look, I'm gonna scratch this because I know you guys will make fun of it anyway, so it's not going to be a serious conversation. But I love South Africa for a number of reasons, and I'm not some kind of ridiculous patriot who's just sings the anthem and cheers for the Springboks. I don't care about that shit. But for me, South Africa is cool because there's exactly half of the kind of lawless Wild West anarchy, craziness, lights go off, lights go on, government doesn't know what the fuck it's doing, that kind of stuff. And then there's a part of it that just works. Like you can see, like we're not Nigeria, right? People still drive on the right side of the road most of the time. We still kind of, we're civil to each other. Most South Africans are kind of, the normal social interactions are polite and friendly.
Yes.
Even, the poorest person in South Africa they're not aggressive and violent and horrible, and the rich people are not like thumbing their nose at the poor people and like spitting at them from their cars. It's still a civil society and we still have some rules, but you don't have to follow those rules here. And I kind of like that mix, and I'm looking for a way to explain this to people who don't live in this country, who might be listening to us now. But in Australia and Canada, as I understand it, the rules help people to just be better, and everything's on time, and everybody does exactly what they should, and there's huge levels of responsibility and personal accountability, and the police do what they're there for, and you can always trust the police, and government try to do the best job possible. it's just very cookie cutter and to me a bit bland. I don't really, it doesn't excite me like South Africa does. There's so much opportunity here as a result of those gaps.
I hear you, okay, but
those are the words. Whenever anybody goes, "I hear you," you're like, "Nah, they fucking disagree with everything."
Unfortunately, it you don't get one without the other. So you don't get this like cool level of chaos where you can avoid, like don't have to follow the rules without a lot of crime. And I can tell you, like, after being like in load shedding and then not having load shedding, I'm like, you know what? I'll follow the rules. It's fine. Let me just follow some rules.
Well, that's probably why a lot of people decide eventually, hey, I'm going to move to this place instead of this place because I'd rather deal with rules than inefficiencies.
I'll tell you some crazy phenomenon, though, that I saw when I was in LA and New York and Canada is an insane amount of homeless people in these first world countries. Yeah. And not just homeless people, like crack zombies of the apocalypse.
Right.
Like everywhere you look, especially in Canada, on all their streets, they have just like oaks, like manic, crazy, just like walking past you in the street. You have to like give them space and like walk around them. And at night, it's terrifying, especially in New York and LA, especially in New York. It is at 3 a.m. in New York City. If you are in the subway, you are in a zombie fight for your life. That's what it is.
Really?
Yes. You have to like. Yeah. You have to just watch out. There's some crazy person could push you onto the tracks. They could like sometimes they come at you. You have to like move out of their way. It's wild.
We were joking. Ellen and Simpiwe and I were talking earlier about like which mall we would least like to be in, or which one we'd most like to be in during a zombie apocalypse. But the way you've just described the New York subway, I think you actually had experience of that.
No, it's wild. The man came up to me. I was just standing there. And he came up to me and he went, "You were killer in the courtroom."
What? Excuse me?
I've heard this from a lot of people who've been to especially San Francisco and LA. They say those are the two worst places for it. There's quite a lot of it on the West Coast in general, but New York,
LA is crazy because it's like you just don't understand how so many people. You don't understand how you're in a first world country and you're just seeing like the streets.
They're like living in tents and they're living under the highway underpasses. And
something that somebody told me is that a lot of the states, a lot of the like more conservative American states, bus mentally unwell people to the liberal states, and because they don't want them on their streets, or because a lot of the homelessness is related and mental health related, right? And so a lot of those states literally put those people on buses to get rid of them from their streets and send them to the liberal states, and the liberal states can't send them away, so they keep them, and that's how they end up on their streets. That's one theory.
That's what we do that with when the 2010 World Cup was on, and didn't we also bus away our homeless people to like Beaufort West and places like that? Yeah, we did.
You have to look good, Gareth. Oh, there's visitors. You're turning up.
To a liberal state, you know what I mean?
Well, I mean, also let's admit this freely that those liberal states are also attractive propositions to the homeless people because they know they can camp wherever they want. They can fill the parks up, and obviously places like LA are just like, because of Hollywood and because of the glitz and glamour and the entertainment business, it just attracts a lot of crazy people. I mean, how many people do you know in entertainment who are insane?
All of it.
Only
all
Alan.
of it, exactly. The only difference is that none of us are like shooting up heroin at the same time as we're being insane and practicing our craft. Well, I speak for me. I'm not going to speak for you, Alan. Alan's always been famous for that.
Not before 8 o'clock on a Wednesday, obviously. Have some responsibility.
But it's such a weird juxtaposition, right, Gilli? I mean, you're in these amazing first world countries with these glass skyscrapers and these incredible infrastructures and public transport, and yet you've got these huge swathes of human homeless people just like lying around, looking for drugs, kind of pushing each other around and sleeping out in the street in the middle of, I mean, now it's summer, so obviously they can, but I mean, you feel sorry for those people in winter, especially.
I don't know how those people survive a Canadian winter. I mean, I was walking past, there's like what I realized was like some kind of methadone clinic. I don't know if that's the right term, but like a clinic where they wean people off drugs. And I just saw a man literally just standing in the street, like looking for a vein in his leg. And I was like, what?
Sheesh.
This is like insane. This is insane, you know? And everything else is so pleasant. The people are so polite. You know, it was like, this is obviously like a big, like, blight on their cities, you know?
Is this a good time to push spirulina and just say that it is very healthy?
Not mainlining spirulina.
Spirulina quickly. Oh
yes,
my
and then
God.
you walk around and you like start talking to people about being a vegan, you know?
Yeah.
Listen, is it, I mean, you've said this twice, but is it true that Canadians are all so polite and so friendly? Because this is also a stereotype. I mean, you know what they say about us. God alone knows what they say about us all over the world. I've heard nice things, like South Africans are very hardworking. But I mean, are Canadians all really that beige? Are they all just so
not
friendly?
really. Listen. It was just my experience in like shows, you know, and performances. Like people, you find out a lot about who people are from shows. And we had this moment in a show where, in the second half of the show that I'm doing, people have to write stuff on like pieces of paper. They have to like write notes, right? And there were pens and paper like on either side of the stage. And I was like, look, we're about to go into a break. In the break, you're going to write your stories. And the whole point is like they're supposed to come up to the stage and there's lots of pens for everybody. They can write or whatever. And this woman took the pens and she took one and she started passing them along. And I was like, I didn't say give the pens to, I was like, oh, you're Canadians. Oh, you're so polite. And everybody started laughing at themselves. And like I've had experiences like I'll give you a perfect example of Canadian politeness. I was in a public toilet, okay, and I was making a wee. And I was getting up from the toilet. Okay, so pants down, right? The door opens. I didn't lock it properly by mistake. The door opens. There's a man standing there.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, the first thing you should do is immediately close that door. Like you can see this. I was like, because I felt somebody like opening the handle, and I said out loud, like, it's busy, you know? But it was too late. He opened the door. And in that moment, it's like, you're supposed to close the door, you know, very fast. But he was like, sorry. And I was like, okay.
Yeah, close the door.
But like, I think the politeness was like, first I must say sorry, then close the door. You know, like the robot brain could not stop him from like having that process.
That's so typical.
Even catcalling, you know, like sometimes you're walking down a street as a woman, like you're walking down the street and you see guys walking towards you and you're like, I just know they're going to say some shit. I know the type. You have lots of people walking past you in the street, and every now and again, some guys walk past you, like, you know, right? You know when it's about to happen.
You can see them, and you're just like, okay. Am I going to be rude?
Yes.
Or am I going to be nice?
You're bracing yourself, and these guys walk past me, and sure enough, they open their mouths, and the thing they said to me was, "Hope you're having a great day."
Wow, that's amazing. What you
and another one, I had another one. He was like, another one. I walked past and he goes, "Excuse me, ma'am," and I'm like, "What?" And he goes, "You've got beautiful hair." I was like,
oh, wow. That's so nice. They're so nice.
Polite perverts. Love it.
Thank you.
Wow. Canada. Yeah, and you're preparing yourself for like a sour response because you're like, get away from creep.
Yeah.
God, that's amazing.
I will have a nice day.
So are you in South Africa for a little while now? What's the story?
I'm in South Africa until the 2nd. I'm in South Africa until the 1st of August, and then I go
like a week.
Cape Town. That's my first.
Cape Town is not South Africa.
No. So I spend one night in the country of Cape Town, and then I go to. On the 2nd, I'm going back on tour for like 2 weeks. I'm going to be in the UK. I'm going to be in Ireland and Scotland and London.
Wow, that's amazing. All right, so go and see Gilli in Cape Town for one night only, and then
don't go see Gilli in Cape Town. Come see Gilli in Joburg.
Okay, even better. All right, yeah, then you don't have to cross borders.
2 shows in Joburg, and let me tell you something. You guys were talking about. I watched Alan's sad little face when Gareth, you started talking about basically how you despise the theater.
Well, I'm a shit. I'm not the target market here. I mean, there are lots of brilliant.
It was brutal watching that happen.
But he doesn't listen to my podcast, and I'm not offended by that.
No, exactly.
No,
Fair.
this is
Fair.
we're all putting out shit all the time. I mean, like, you didn't like my picture on Instagram. And I mean, Alan's been through a lot of change in the world of theatre and comedy, so he knows what he's dealing with here.
That's okay.
And I mean,
No, it's all right.
People like me are
but here's what I'll tell you.
his...
You talk about like people being like lazy to go to comedy and like go to theatre and go to stuff like that. It's only in South Africa. I can tell you the shows overseas are very well attended. People are dying to go out to plays. They're dying to see comedy.
Yeah.
If you stand on any London street, outside any London club, there are like, the first time I saw that, it blew my mind. I mean, it was 2021 and I saw people waiting in line to watch comedy around the block and they don't even know who they're seeing. I mean, so people go to the theater. I think it's a cultural thing. I wish we would have more of that here.
Is it, well, my question is, do you think South Africans don't go because we're naturally funny? Like every other person you meet can crack you up and you're just like, why must I pay money to make you laugh? And therefore, like overseas, it's not necessarily.
People say that about the Irish, and the Irish still go see shows, and the Brits also. I mean, the Brits are known for comedy. They all think they're hilarious. Every guy at a pub thinks he's the funniest man on earth. And still, those places are packed full of people watching comedy. So, I hear you, but I don't think that's the case. I think we just don't have a culture of like paying to see people in dark rooms. That's what I got. Like I was in London, I was like, oh, these people have it in their bones for centuries to go sit in a dark room with lots of other people and watch something on a stage. It just is part of the culture, Having said that, I'm not asking for 10,000 people to come see my show. My shows are very small. They can only take about 50 people. So if 50 of you could please look at all these little comments. Gilli, you came back from Australia. Gilli, welcome back. Can you please stop? Can you please just come to the show? Please come to the
fucking show. She's not here for her health.
You won't regret it. It's hilarious. I'm very good at the moment.
No, you are. But like you're exercising your comedy muscle like very few other people are, right? I mean, Alan, you'll also be able to witness this, that when you're doing a lot of stuff, you get better and better. It's when you take a break and when you are on a hiatus that you lose your ability to do the timing right, to get the words right, to say it, to read the faces. That stuff goes away
very quickly. And it's been, I mean, Gilli is a fine example of someone who works and works and works and works. And it's extraordinary watching her growth. She's incredible. She did a thing last year, no doubt you know about this, where she put out an Insta story every single day for the whole year. And at one point she was owning the fact that, oh, why did I ever start this madness and how hard it is? But the honest truth is, for those of us who did watch it, and I think I watched at least 70% of those stories, if not more over the year, you could see how she got more comfortable in front of the camera. And I know, because we've had this conversation, how much it's improved and helped her with her stand-up. This woman works, she watches stuff, she travels, she gets out, she puts herself out of her comfort zone. This is what you want in a comic, somebody who wants to be better and actually shows us that she is.
That's why she's killing it. That's why she's going all over the world, and people are
all over the world.
Alan, thanks, Alan. Listen, Alan, come see my bloody show.
I just want to say that Gilli, we checked in with you on this show a couple of times, and I also watched your Instagram, which I still follow, and I saw all the stuff that you were doing. I couldn't believe the kind of output. That's tough to do. So, I mean, if you're pushing yourself like that, then you're bound to become the best.
Gareth, I have to tell you, it was an absolute nightmare.
Yeah, of course. Of course it was.
I hated every second of it. I want you all to know.
Everybody thinks that entertainment, whether it's doing a theater show like Alan does, whether it's doing stand-up like the both of you do, whether it's doing the kind of stuff that Simpiwe and I do, everybody thinks it's fun and we love every minute of it. Of course, when things are flowing and when it's all working properly and you've put in the work and you've done the effort and you've made sure you've done some research or whatever it might be, you've perfected your little bit of the craft, then it looks great and it feels great too. Yeah. But Jesus, those bad days, wow.
The 4 a.m.s, trying to get me out of bed.
And I'm not asking for sympathy here. I mean, my audience could give a shit. They'll tell me to shut right up if I ask for sympathy. But the fact is, those bad days, you need something to get you through it. And it might be coffee, it might be friends, it might be a drink, it might be just completely barricading yourself off and being a bit of a hermit for a little while, throwing yourself into books. It could be anything. I don't know what you guys do. What do you do, Gilli, when you need to kind of fill up, refresh?
You know what? I'm struggling to find that at the moment, because it used to be like, if I'm in a foreign place, like, oh, I get to go for like long walks, and it's, it's very nice. One of the things that's very nice about being overseas is you can walk in the street and then not come back with all your belongings to where you started your walk.
That's
no,
nice.
Sometimes actually that's what I would do. That's what I would do to relax overseas. I'd stand in the street and just hold my phone out like this. Just want to not get stolen, and it would give me great peace.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah, that's get out there. What do you do, Alan?
Listen, the days off are hermit days. I try not to talk to anyone unless they're the closest people in your life, and even they know that you're not going to get a lot, because you spend so much time being gregarious and putting energy out, and that does takes it out. It depletes the pot. So you do need at least one day a week where you just try and whether that's just sleeping or watching mindless television or whatever. Yeah, it's important.
All right.
Wow.
She's so efficient. While she's talking to us, she's also typing. She said, come and watch my show, as if she's not in the room with us at the moment. At the Bioscope on the 23rd or 27th of July. Tickets at the link on my Instagram. Go and follow Gilli on Instagram.
I can't listen to everything you guys say. I mean, with respect.
And you haven't.
Very good. No, definitely not. Listen, love you guys. You fill us up. You give us a reason to smile, even when inflation is high, petrol prices are killing us, Eskom switching on and off. It's always good to have a reason to laugh at ourselves and at the stuff that you guys come up with. So thank you for being on the show, both of you, this morning. All the details of Alan's show and of Gilli's appearances and shows, all of it will be on cliffcentral.com. You can follow the links to their social media for more. Simpiwe, we will see you tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. Have an excellent day, everybody. Get lots of